All right. Hello. I have to do the recording. Okay. Hello, I'm Venam, and this talk is going to be about keeping track of your things. Keeping track of your things, your machine, is part of any workflow. A machine is like a house. A computer, like a house, requires constant tidying. And it also requires to know what's in it, to find it, and to remember what's in it. It's what makes it easy to use a machine, what makes it seamless, maybe, or remove the friction when you use a machine. So this talk is going to be a review or a culmination of a thread that has been fermenting with concept on the forums for the past, let's say, 6 years. So it's going to be a sort of brainstorm session related to keeping track of your things. So the idea of removing boundaries, of removing friction in a workflow, of making it more intuitive to a point where the computer becomes an extension of the memory and thought, this isn't new. It was first properly inked out in a 1998 paper called The Extended Mind by Andy Clark and David Chalmers. And I really recommend reading it because it's quick and nice, if you like sci-fi more or less, because it's real. So they additionally put forward the notion of active externalism, taking HCI, the human-computer interaction, to another level by actively externalizing their memories and the mind in general onto a machine, to then use the best out of it and take the burden away from the brain, or at least in theory. So let's put a small thought experiment. So it's a simple exercise. You can close your eyes and remember the last time you had to work on a machine that wasn't yours. So what were the things that annoyed you the most? Was it the window manager itself? Was it that it was missing the tools you usually work with? Was it because you just it didn't seem responsive to your needs? Or was it because you were lost on that system? So in my opinion, what makes it annoying to work on a new machine is when you're lost, in general lost, and when it doesn't feel like home, or it isn't flowing intuitively. But why are we lost? Is it because we can't insert our thoughts into the machine? So the general idea is quite obvious. We want to insert our thoughts into the machine to reduce the friction we have with it. But how do we actually do it? So let's start with a couple of suggestions that rotate around the idea that information is the biggest asset. So we need a way to add memories as mementos, plus a way to access this information that we entered into the machine. So one way to do it would be with reminders / to-do list. So as most mentioned in the thread we had, this usually takes the form of a text file maybe, and it's managed in different ways. Either it's a plain text file or one that would require a software to manage it. Most of the people mentioned Emacs, org mode, or packages around it like org roam. So it's a plain text personal knowledge management system. So it's one of the go-to solution for journaling mechanism. Other people put the memos in plain text file and use grep to go through them, or they use dmenu to find what's in them, or they use a sort of fuzzy search, be it rip grep or other tools. So these text files can contain extra metadata sometimes, so that can help the search depending on the format that you're using. It could be Markdown or LaTeX or whatever format that supports metadata. And additionally, the metadata can be used to support scheduling, timing, calendar, agenda, events, reminder, and it can also be used to store contact information. Another category of memory helper are wikis and docs. So the tools that are used to store and search common tasks or commands. Obviously, this applies only to commands and procedures that aren't easy to remember by themselves. A lot of system administrators use those tools, usually at work and a professional setup. And it includes any type of personal or common wiki, such as plain text files with commands in them, HNB, WikiWiki, VimWiki, column. There's a lot of solution. And it also includes offline documentation, such as Zeal docs, or even mem pages, or you could include the documentation of the language itself if it has one like Rust or Perl doc for Perl. And in this category, you could insert IRC history if you're able to save the history of the IRC to be searchable and act as its own wiki. Another idea that is kind of popular in the Rising community is to keep a list of commands on the root window of your machine. So it would show as a wallpaper, or if you use conf, but it's not so popular anymore, and it acts as a sort of cheat sheet. Again, yet another idea is to reuse the mail functionality, the mail dear, to email yourself important ideas, and then you would have another script in the pipeline that would frequently be called via cron jobs or other change tracking things like iNotify to perform management operation on these emails that you sent yourself, to filter the notes and categorize them if you want. Another category is in the similar fashion, it's the shell that can be used for documentation by consulting its history, aliases, and function. The shell itself, the environment of the shell is made to be customizable to suit the user. So one useful trick I always go for is to set, for example, a big value for the hist size, the number of lines to remember from the history. In a way, it can be very useful, especially if you can move this file or sync it between machines. So you can have this shell history to save a lot of time when you don't want to remember complex tasks. You just go, you search through the history. Again, shell scripts also could be considered reminders because there are helpers around more complex and repeatable procedures. Another way to remember something is to leave trails on the way leading to that thing. So this can be achieved via browser bookmarks or simply checking the current open tabs in the browser. So that's a thing to show your current state of mind. I'm sure everybody does that. And you can have like a soft link in the file manager, or even some file managers support bookmarks, so it's a similar function. And some people went a bit further and they created CD, a change directory, but on Edge. For example, there's one called Zoxide, written in Rust, that keeps track of the most frequently used directory so that you can navigate to them by best match or by the frequently used directory. A last category, and a great way to remember a command, is to insert it directly in the keybind of the window manager as a hotkey, either the window manager itself or a hotkey daemon, or any kind of program launcher, be it a panel, bar, run window, etc. And directly keybinds are a way to memorize things and have them next to you. Keybinds themselves can be annoying if you're on a different machine and they use different keybinds, but usually that's not movable to another machine. But let's not focus so much on this aspect, because it would be part of the whole field of HCI and how easy it is to use a machine. Let's do another thought experiment. What are your own memory helpers in your current workflow? I cited a bunch, but what do you personally use? Try to think about them for a moment. Okay, what if you could have the same things on another machine? Would it help? Will they guide you? So here it's good to embrace it. There's nothing wrong with using your machine for what it is, a tool. We can try to do it consciously and actively instead of right now, retrospectively, noticing what works, but afterwards. And interestingly, a common answer from people and the thread is that their own writing, their own blogs or other, is their best way to extend their memory. And personally, I can assess this for myself, the idea that your blog is a sort of reflection of your mind, your own wiki. And it shows that it requires a bit of involvement to get back something from this mechanism. So we can go a step further. The step further is to enter the domain of knowledge database, also referred to as knowledge garden, or knowledge center, or digital garden, or also known as personal knowledge base, PKB, or even personal memex. As the name implies, this is like tending a garden, pruning it, taking care of it over a long time. So it's about the question of how to organize information, which we do not know at the moment might be useful later or not. Organizing information for your future self. It can be virtually everything you learned and you don't want to forget. A sort of bookkeeper type of task for personal optimization. It should be a sort of seamless habit. Obviously, some people take it a step too far, maybe in an oppressive way, becoming data hoarders of anything. And most of the solution I've seen, at least on the internet, to this problem, they consist of multiple phases, mostly 4 or 5 phases. The first one is how do I insert the data, the adding phase, the gathering or the tracking, be it automatic or not. Then there's the categorization, how to tag the data with metadata or adding extra useful information or linking the data together with previous notes you've taken or whatever form the data you have. The third step would be a way to search the data, personal search engine, or being able to do queries on the data. The fourth step would be how to display it, be it a UI, command line interface, or a graph. And finally, maybe sharing it with the world if it's part of your concerns. For these things, there's a lot of custom ways to achieve all that, and everyone does it differently. Right? The insertion phase is usually done manually, using some of the stuff mentioned previously, and it depends on the actual storage mechanism that is in place. However, it can also be automated using all sorts of tracking mechanisms. For instance, some people rely on this heavily, directly inputting data from the browser, from bookmarks or chat phone or other devices that gather data. And then the categorization is made using tags or keywords attached to this data, or even dates. Some tools allow referencing other block of information, so then you can have a sort of graph of information. Then the information or data is dumped somewhere. And you have to think about it like throwing things in a bag, not think about it too much. One of the places to put these could be an aggregator like RSS or Wallabag. Wallabag is a thing for articles you want to read later, or Miniflux. Both of those, all of those are aggregators. Another place to throw them would be maybe a personal wiki, like we've said, or even something popular is a static site generator, which is quite common. It can also be thrown in any of the offline documentation solution we've talked about, like ZealDoc. Additionally, they can also be put maybe in a place like a space repetition software if you want to be reminded of the information. And as a bonus, a lot of space repetition software also allows searching, which can also help with the next step, which is to search the information. Here we can list Anki for flashcard or orgfc. Or you can even push them through emails to remind you from day to day. Yet, all of this data is useless if it can't be searched. Some of the wiki solution, web blogs, already include that feature of searching. So that makes them easily accessible from anywhere, even with an internet connection. Otherwise, you can rely on a personal search engine, such as Monocle. So all curation grows until it requires search, and all search grows until it requires curation. Curation is about mostly entertainment, not utility, especially if you let someone else do the curation for you. So another method of getting something useful out of the data, to not curate it directly, is to use visualization tools, creating maps over or other visual clues that let you see how it all grows over time. However, as I've come to see, there's no really wrapping or pre-made solution for this visualization part. And everyone is coming up with their own way to do that, to display and search their data. But more generically, at this point, the information should be used as a tool for thinking, kind of like a mind map of your own mind. So a couple of examples. One thing that's popular is Evernote. We can mention it. It's a proprietary solution to gather and organize dump of data. Another proprietary solution is Dendron. And there are a lot of cloud proprietary collaboration tools like Notion, Airtable, Readwise. And also multiple note-taking software or journaling software that let you have a sort of wiki of notes. One of them is Trillium. Trillium Notes. It's open source, and it's a popular hierarchical graphical notebook. So it does a hierarchy of them. And there's also a lot of these type of hierarchical notebook like Joplin, one that I personally use called HNB, which stands for Hierarchical Notebook, HNB. Another one is LockSec, Graphical Knowledge Management and Collaboration Platform, also open source. And there's quite a lot of simple command line ones that do that. For instance, there's dnote and Golang, which stores everything in text file that are easily grabbable. And similarly, there's another command line one called note-taking app, JRNL. Another one is called KB, Knowledge Management Database, Knowledge Base. Another one is called todo.txt, which is also simple and minimalistic. And another one is called note.sh. So as you can see, there's a lot of text-based solution to do this note-taking stuff. We can also mention again the Zim, Zeal, and other personal wiki that can be used, all mentioned earlier, but we can think a bit further. We can use our own Wikimedia, our own instance of Wikimedia to do that, or WikiWiki. And one of the very, very popular solution I've seen is to use Gitbook for personal knowledge management, because it already comes with a searchable wiki feature. The search through the info is done normally through the note-taking app, but we can be done with grep or Monocle, which is a personal search engine, or dmenu. Now, when it comes to visualizing the data, the knowledge garden as it's called, it can be done using a library called Telescope, or if you're able to do it, you can use a mind map software, which is made to show your mind in a map, as the name implies. But that's only if you're able to reformat the data in a way that's compatible with it, so that it can display it as a sort of, like here, free mind. Or normally people prefer to do it manually and export it as a sort of galaxy of their ideas. And the link between the ideas are either the metadata, or if one notes reference another note. And lastly, a nice feature that knowledge base could have is a way to export or share tidbits of information with others, to be able to export something from it. Because a garden is obviously nicer if you can display it, and knowledge gardens are a prime example of working and learning maybe in public, if you choose to do that. And instead of being a solo affair, maybe you can do it semi-private and make it available everywhere. And some people are trying to make a business out of this, maybe calling the publicly available custom search a boutique search, and they compare it with a normal search like Google, so you can have your own mini search. And finally, there is obviously a community on Reddit for digital gardens. You can visit them for more inspiration, because they love sharing their gardens, and it's fascinating to see everyone has a different way to build their gardens. Now let's think a bit further, maybe a bit off topic. But apart from memory, we might want to include multimedia as part of it. And this is already something that's discussed in a lot of places. In this case, we talk of document and multimedia management server, which can be used to search or find by keywords, movies, images, music, titles, by rating, by tagging. It's already part of the ecosystem of music or video. And we can name a few media servers such as Mediatom, Gerbera, and clients such as Kodi and Totem. And we can include the Internet of Things here even. On another side, we can extend this further on the topic that applies to moral or legal entities like governments, or even companies that need to keep track of the data they generate. And we refer to this as domain. We refer to this domain as enterprise content or document management. And an open source solution here is Datafari like Safari. And some of the solution in this sphere could possibly be applied or adapted for personal use, because they're way, way more mature, and they're more for collaborative media and note sharing software. And enterprise normally requires strong auditing, segregation of access right, strong categorization of data, auditing of historic changes over documents, and much more. So it's a bit more advanced. Now let's move to the issues that come up. And as with anything related to gathering data, you're turning yourself basically into big data. It can be a concern with privacy. So just keep in mind that if the information of your knowledge garden is found online or you choose to learn publicly, it's tremendous resource of personal and probably intimate information that you are giving away and storing in a single place. So a knowledge base is something that can last a lifetime because learning is normally for life, and that's really a lot of data. So the knowledge base should be first open source and local. And in addition, I can find that the knowledge base should store our knowledge in a format that is as simple and easily accessible as possible for future use. If you wanna, if the software you're currently using goes out of support, for example. And yet I know some people give away the information either unconsciously through their social media or even deliberately through projects such as Open Humans. They do it deliberately. But if you're still paranoid to a point where you wouldn't even trust storing these personal information offline on your disk, then you can always go back to paper and pen. So on a psychological level now, we can ask the question, does it make us really more efficient to go beyond and extend our mind through our machine? And what kind of psychological effects does it have? And obviously, has it been studied or not? So one issue about tending a digital garden or building this sort of habit is that it can be akin to hoarding behavior, which we know can become a disease. And this brings a sentiment of anxiety about the storage and gathering of data. If the machine is an extension of me, then it's like losing a limb if I lose the data. So anyway, keep in mind that organizing knowledge in itself should never become the goal. Another psychological effect is how it changes the way we retrieve and value knowledge, as we now have what we call a transactive or externalized memory. So some studies have found that in that case, we're more likely to remember where we find the information rather than the information itself. So this is sometimes referred to as the Google effect, which makes us more likely to forget the information if we can easily find it later. In that case, we focus less on factual information, because it's now offloaded into another medium. We call this the memory of fact, the semantic memory. And thus, in this case, the decision that we do that rely on facts make us dependent on the medium. And this can be both beneficial and harmful. In a way, it gives us more opportunity to focus on conclusion or emergent hypothesis, meta-information, or overall aspect rather than the facts themselves. It frees up maybe space to think about other things. And even though other research show that analytic thinker, people that do research, are way less likely to rely on such means of externalizing their memory or search engine. But overall, this type of thing gives us more breadth of knowledge rather than depth of knowledge. And yet another finding is that maybe we never actually look back at our notes when we take them. And most often we only search through them. So maybe the space repetition through the knowledge base along with search are way more important than the rest of the features that we mentioned. So this concludes our overview of how we can keep track of things on our machine and some of the ideas surrounding the topic, a sort of mini brainstorm. And we've seen that we all do it, maybe intuitively or not, and that it can be advantageous or to do it deliberately maybe, but that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone does it in a mix of multiple things. Yet the concept I find is captivating to think about, an extension of our mind. In that sense, maybe we can think of the web as a digital garden composed by all of us, both machines and human, or maybe you don't want to think of that. You can think of it as a supernatural computer, maybe folklore. Thank you very much for listening. Now, if you have questions, you can post them in the chat.